Good afternoon. On behalf of Ananta, I extend a very warm welcome to you. We are grateful to the Ambassador of the UAE, His Excellency Dr. Ahmed Al-Wana, for having joined us today. We at Ananta Aspen have various discussions, and those of you who are regulars would realize that we have 4 different regions. Very seldom do we have a discussion on a single country. Today, we are discussing relations between India and UAE. Why? Why? Because we consider UAE not only as an important country, but bilaterally as an important partner. And since we are going to have one session now, followed by 2 others, and tomorrow we will have another closed-door session to discuss in detail these relations. But I'll just basically tell you how these relations, in my opening remarks, just restrict how I see these relations emerging. They started with 4 things to my mind were important: labor, market, energy security, and security. Labor. First, our people started going there. Today, we have 8 million Indians in the Gulf region. They play an important role there. In all spheres, the largest expat community in all the 8 countries, the majority community in UAE, we are very happy about that, and in Bahrain, Qatar, and some other countries. The professionals and others play an important role, and for us, they also send back money, so it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Second, markets. UAE is a very important country. In those of you who read the newsletters which Ambassador Talmeed Ahmad writes for us would find that in the first quarter of this year, the non-oil trade exceeded $75 billion, which makes them a global leader both in trade and in re-exports. And India, for a long time, UAE for some time was India's largest trading partner, which many of you don't know, and Ambassador Ranjit Gupta is very fond of that and would be discussing that in great details in his remarks. So UAE and India are important trade
in banking, whether you were in payments, whether you
statement after our Prime Minister's visit and his implementation, who will take our relations, I'm confident, a step further. And before we welcome His Royal Highness the Crown Prince on our Republic Day. Number 3, oil, energy security. Well, as you know, the US is becoming self-sufficient. India, China, and Europe, the demand is increasing. Asia will emerge, or has emerged, as the largest buyer of oil from the UAE and the other West Asian countries. So we will have a lot to do together. Why do we prefer West Asia and UAE? 1, they have the largest reserves. 2, the best energy infrastructure. 3, their cost of production is the lowest. 4, they have spare capacity. And 5, for us, they are reliable partners. So they will be long-term partners for us. And finally, when we are doing so well, naturally, the important aspect comes security. That India and the UAE have been doing many things together and will continue to do. All of them are not known to all of us and are not discussed in open sessions, but I think security dialogue between the 2 countries is going to be a firm basis of our relationship in the future. But I will just refer, before I conclude, while talking of security, refer to one historical fact which happened in 1984. An Indian plane was hijacked. It spent some time in neighboring Lahore and then was taken to UAE. The hijackers had a pistol. The UAE authorities handed over that pistol to the Indian ambassador, and Ambassador Ishrat Aziz brought that pistol back here. That he had problems at the Indian customs is a different story. He was carrying a pistol, but that was a different story. But the fact remains that the UAE gave that pistol, and when we sent that number to the concerned international authorities, we came to know that that was one of the 400 pistols which had been bought by a government organization in Pakistan. But that, the point that I'm making is not where it originated, but the point I'm making is that UAE immediately handed the pistol to us. So that was 30 years ago. And since then, our relations have emerged much further. So India and UAE, we can look forward to a very warm, productive relationship. And with these words, I have great pleasure in asking my friend and colleague, Ambassador Ranjit Gupta, to make his comments.
Thank you. His Excellency Mr. Ahmed Al-Banna, the distinguished Ambassador of the United Arab Emirates to India, Ambassador Lamba, Chairman of the Ananta Aspen Center, distinguished participants in the conference, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon. I have great pleasure in welcoming you all to this important event. I would like to compliment Ananta Aspen Center on taking this thoughtful and particularly timely initiative to organize this event on how the very cordial relations between India and the UAE can be further strengthened. We particularly appreciate the personal participation of His Excellency, the Ambassador of the UAE, his presence, commitment to take this relationship to a higher level. This in the light of the acceptance of the Indian government's invitation by His Highness the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi to be the chief guest at India's Republic Day celebrations in January 2017. Prime Minister Modi visited the UAE on the 16th, 17th of August 2015. Rather unusually, His Highness the Crown Prince paid a return visit in less than 6 months from the 10th to a particularly high-level delegation, including 2 of his brothers, both holding very important positions, and a host of important cabinet ministers. His inter alia, consciously overriding protocol made in January. But this year it has been done well in advance on October the 2nd, and that too in the immediate aftermath of India's surgical strikes in the illegally Pakistani-occupied Kashmir in response to attacks by Pakistani terrorists on a military camp in Uri in India's state of Jammu and Kashmir. The timing of the announcement is thus particularly significant, as it came amidst very high tension between India and Pakistan. He has enjoyed a particularly warm, special relationship. The morning after the terrorist attack in Uri, the UAE reiterated that, and I quote, it stands against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations and express solidarity it may take to confront and eradicate terrorism, unquote. It deserves highlighting that particularly since 2008, terrorist attacks in Mumbai by Pakistan-based terrorists, the UAE has provided India the best anti-terrorism cooperation of any country in the world. The UAE also supports India's proposal for the comprehensive. India's total trade in goods with the GCC countries in 2012-2013 stood at 159.14 billion, making the GCC India's largest regional trading bloc by far. This has been India's fastest growing trade relationship in the past 2 decades. That year, the UAE was India's largest trading partner. Just India's exports to the UAE were more than India's total trade with each of its trading partners in the world except China, US, and Saudi Arabia. That says something. In the past 10 years, the UAE has invariably been amongst India's top 3 trading partners, more than once being the number 1. In a particularly noteworthy contrast to the strangely much celebrated Sino-Indian trade, Indo-UAE trade has been balanced, with sometimes India even enjoying a favorable trade balance. The UAE has also been amongst the top 6 sources of India's oil imports for 3 decades. Given that the total indigenous Emirati population of the UAE is less than 1.1 million, the fact that 2.6 million Indians live and work in the UAE, significantly outnumbering the locals, and by far the largest expatriate group in the UAE, is yet another particularly noteworthy statistic. In GCC countries, internal security and stability command, understandably, the highest priority. Therefore, this fact of this large Indian presence represents an enormous vote of confidence in Indians and India. It is also particularly noteworthy that there are no bilateral politically contentious issues. The UAE supports India's permanent membership of the UN Security Council. The joint statements issued after Prime Minister Modi's visit to the UAE and His Highness the Crown Prince's visit to India are really worth reading very, very carefully, as they exhibit the enormous depth and breadth of the across-the-spectrum comprehensiveness of bilateral cooperation. India's very deliberate hands-off approach to current armed conflicts and political disputes in West Asia presents a considerable contrast to the UAE's policies vis-à-vis these conflicts. But in a truly statesman-like approach, the leaders of the 2 countries have very consciously skirted these differences and not allowed them to be the slightest impediment. Therefore, as I'm sure you will all agree, all of what I have said taken together fully justifies the conclusion that the overall Indo-UAE relationship could, indeed should, be considered India's best bilateral relationship in the world. Can this close relationship be elevated to an even higher substantive level? My answer is a very emphatic yes. I do not see any political impediments whatsoever. The leaders of the 2 countries have displayed the political will to do so in ample measure, and now it is up to the governmental machinery and private sectors in the 2 countries to translate this into concrete actions within stipulated timeframes. The objective of the interaction today and tomorrow is not to debate whether this relationship can be taken to a higher level, but to discuss the detailed modalities of how it can be done. Having said all this, transparency demands that I draw attention to a potentially very major hurdle. India has a poor record in implementing agreements and projects on the ground. This is almost entirely due to serious, archaic, structural and systemic deficiencies. And unless these are addressed on a war footing, the full potential of strong bilateral relationships simply cannot be achieved. During Prime Minister Modi's visit to the UAE last year, the UAE had agreed to put in $75 billion a mind-boggling sum then, and in the context of whatever any country has done vis-a-vis India in the past, into upgrading India's infrastructure, including in strategic projects. If India can implement these projects in a meaningfully rapid manner, the UAE itself and several GCC countries, flush with vast investable funds and very keen to invest in India, could bring into India mind-boggling sums in the hundreds of billions of dollars. This is by far the best way to achieve the top priority of Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy of ensuring 8 to 10% annual economic growth. No country or region will agree, no country or region in the world will agree to put in such vast sums of money into India. The onus is on India to put its act together. Knowing the UAE a little bit and the region a little bit, I know that if the leadership of GCC countries decides to do something, they do it, and they do it within time frames stipulated. A cricket-mad country surely understands that dropped catches lose matches. Let me caution that if we drop this catch, we will not only lose this match, but many series to come. India may not get another such golden opportunity. Thank you for your attention. May I now invite His Excellency to make his keynote address.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Chairman of Ananta Center, Excellency, former Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted and honored to be amongst you all today as a keynote speaker, talking about specifically, of course, the bilaterals between the United Arab Emirates and India, but at the same time touch on some of the major important matters in the region. I see a lot of familiar faces, and maybe many of you have already the information that I want to share with you. Even maybe some of you know even better than me in certain areas. And some of you maybe even heard me at some other occasions. So I may be repeating myself, but then sometimes I have to, there are certain things that has to be disseminated and emphasized on. As to our bilateral trade, it was mentioned that India is trading partner number 1 to the United Arab Emirates with a total trade of about 49 or close to $50 billion. If we look 25 years or 30 years ago, total trade between United Arab Emirates and India was in the range of $128 million. So imagine the vast increase during the past 25 years from $128 million to $50 billion. And as far as I know, we are trading partner number 3 to India, after China and United States of America. Now imagine the size of the United Arab Emirates and the size of China and USA. For us to be number 3, that again means a lot of things. Having said that, I go back to some of my past readings, trying to find out when was the very first interaction by our region, geographically that is, and the Indian subcontinent. Now, some of my readings took me back to the Pharaoh's era, where one of the kings of the pharaohs sent an expedition, a commercial expedition. She was the wife of Khofo. When she took over the ruling of the region there in Egypt, she sent an expedition to India specifically. And that was somewhere around 3,000 years ago. Even some of my readings took me back to our own geographical region. At that time, there was no UAE, or there was an area of the Arabian Peninsula, and there was a place called Julfar, the old name of Ras Al Khaimah. And some of the readings, some of the findings of Vasco da Gama's landing in Julfar, and from Julfar continuing to east and landing in India. So the relation has been historical. The interaction amongst the Arabs, and specifically the Gulf region in India, was great. In Bombay, looking at some of our very first graduates in the medical field, they were graduates from universities in India and specifically Bombay. Some of the very first doctors, UAE doctors that we had. Some of the very first Arabic language school was set up by some of the nationals from the Gulf region, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, and Bombay and the regions. Now, having said that, in reference to some of the historical relations, we come back and touch on the importance of that relationship that we at one time depended on. And then the other sectors that now has been explored more: aerospace, IT, renewable energy, R&D, and peaceful usage of nuclear power, and so on and so on.
With all these positives and negatives, what you will find...
Our relationship, and we talked about it earlier, the security and the cyber security and the collaboration. If we talk about the investment, we mentioned that there is about 2.6 or 2.8 million Indian FDI. We don't have the correct figures, but there is a small percentage as an FDI for indirect investment, and then the rest, the the Indian investors' relationship with the bankers and with the financial institutions and so on. There is somewhere around $10 million investment from the UAE in India. About $4 billion in a format of FDI. During the past year, 11 months or 12 months, there has been an extra $1 billion investment that was put by UAE national companies in different sectors in India. There is about 13 or 14 billion dollars remittances by the Indians from United Arab Emirates into India, yearly, that is. The UAE covers a population of over 2.2 billion in terms of the 5 hours radius, including the MENA region, Iran, East Africa. So it is a hub. We've created a traditional hub. Export, import, re-export was an important element of our economy, traditionally. If we go back in the 60s, early 70s, the natural harbor of the Dubai Creek gave Dubai that characteristics. And then eventually, of course, we were able to invest in our infrastructure within Dubai and Abu Dhabi and some of the other Emirates. And we've become pioneers of the port management and logistics centers and air transport. There are some successful stories, and I don't want to speak about, what UAE has in terms of, I don't know, best airline or tallest building or those, we put aside. But we were part of of course, the international organizations, United Nations, and the Arab League, and all the other organizations. We were members. But now I think within the region, there has been major changes. And the United Arab Emirates took a step where they are in the leadership of formulating the politics and the political situation in the region. Now, talking about the region, and we know that there are certain pockets of unrest. Yemen, the Houthis, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon in certain ways, Libya. There has been some alliance, whether international or Arab alliances, created to overcome the radicalism, the terrorist movement, and those fanatics, radical movements, those people who sometimes they pretend or they use religion sometimes, other, but in fact they have nothing to do with religion or with Islam or whatever, just like Daesh. I hate to call them ISIS. Call them Daesh. ISIS means, if we look at the shortening of the name, Islamic State. They're not Islamic at all. Hezbollah and, the export of the revolution that Iran has taken steps, that has created a major unrest in the region. we believe. And there has to be strong international alliance and efforts to stop these radical movements. Taliban from one side, and Al-Qaeda from another side, and Daesh from another side, and I don't know, Jabhat al-Nusra from another side, and Hezbollah from another side, and Muslim Brotherhood from another side, and so on and so on. So we were able to play a major role in formulating the political equation in the region, creating a very strategic alliance and relationship with Saudi Arabia, looking at some of our friends, good friends in the international arena, such as India. Now, for our Crown Prince to visit India in February, of course, followed by a very famous visit of Honorable Prime Minister Modi in August 2015, and then for our Crown Prince to come back again to India as a chief guest of the Republic Day, I guess the one will have to read between the lines. What does it mean? To me, it means a lot of things. So, a strategic alliance, a strategic relationship, and a strategic agreement has been finalized with India, and hopefully with in the visit of His Highness will be announced and signed officially. These are some of the political and some of the whatever challenges that we were facing in the Middle East. The economic challenges, as you all know, oil and gas is a major issue. But finally, there is somehow an understanding that is coming into or falling into the right direction or the right track in terms of the OPEC and the members of the OPEC and the non-members of the OPEC, and for them to reach to an agreement on the oil prices. Now, I know India is a major consumer of energy, oil and gas. And it is not in the interest of India for some sort of control or setting the prices of oil. But if we look at the long term, I think it is in the benefits of everybody. Oil and gas would remain a major player in our economy for a long time. We are looking at some other formats of energy, renewable energy, atomic, nuclear. But until we reach to and compare the cost of those energies in comparison to oil and gas, I think we have a long way. Security, cybersecurity. We have signed an agreement with the government of India in terms of cybersecurity and also in terms of exchange of information, reference to security and reference to also military collaboration. And by all means, I could really say proudly that during the past year, we were able to take the UAE-India relationship from one track to a completely different track. And it is the momentum that we need to look at. I agree with Mr. Ambassador saying that it is a momentum and we need to work on it from both sides, United Arab Emirates and India, to make it a successful relationship, a successful integration, and a successful model. I know I exceeded a little bit of my time.
We are here to listen to you.
Thank you. But I just thought that I'll share some of my thoughts on some of those general headlines. And I thank you all again for your attention. And I thank my host for allowing me to be amongst you all and share some of those information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you.
I would like to thank His Excellency, the distinguished ambassador of the UAE. May I mention to those who already don't know that Ambassador Banna is not like some of us, somewhat superfluous now, diplomats. He belongs to the real world, not to the arcane world of diplomacy, and was specially selected by His Highness the Crown Prince for this assignment to India, given the nature of the developing relationship. You've been with us for about 1 year. We hope that you will stay with us for as long as it takes to transform the Indo-UAE relationship to be truly the best on both sides.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
Would you be prepared to answer a few questions?
Yes, of course. If anybody
Well,
has
if
any
somebody
comments
has,
or any question, I'll be more than
His
glad
Excellency has
to.
very kindly agreed,
Of course.
General.
Yes, sir.
They mentioned, besides Daesh and Al-Qaeda and others that you have mentioned, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, etc. You had brought out that you have very good relations with Pakistan also. I want to know, while you are playing such a good role regarding terrorism in your part of the world, since Pakistan is dependent on you for economic and development aid, what is the role you can play or influence them to stop cross-border terrorism, not only against India, Afghanistan, and the world in general? Thank you, Chairman.
Would you like to take the answer one by one?
Yes, better. And the question is fresh in my mind. Well, yes, we do have a good relationship with many countries in the world. And our relationship with a specific country has nothing to do or would not affect any other relationship with any other country. I was, before me taking the post of the ambassador of United Arab Emirates in India, one of my colleagues, without mentioning names, from the Indian side, mentioned something to me at one time, and it made me really think. And what was mentioned was that India has thought that because we had such special relationship with Pakistan and such good relationship with Pakistan, that India or UAE will not be able to reach to that real good relationship with India and a strategic relationship with India. And that has somehow prevented or was a barrier from the Indian side, or the information was not somehow correct. our relationship with India is something and with Pakistan is something else. And I think our relationship with India is growing way faster and in a much better way than our relationship with any other country in the region, in this region. We condemn any act of terrorism. And as Ambassador mentioned earlier in his speech, the United Arab Emirates was the first country when the attack of Uri took place. We were the very first country that issued a statement officially by my Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed, condemning any act of terrorism and condemning the attack. And
in fact, in Pathankot, after Pathankot also.
yes, exactly. So therefore, and we work very closely with India when we talk about terrorism. And the dialogue that now has taken place, people saying the definition of terrorism. What is terrorism? What is the definition of terrorism? Okay, we have to look into it and we have to differentiate. At one time, those people used to call about liberal movements, and I don't know what this is something. This is terrorism. It's terrorism. Bombing innocent people and killing innocent people is terrorism, whether it's done on an individual base or group or. Yes, we can work very closely with India to reach to a better understanding in the definition of terrorism, in counter-attacking terrorism, and into preventing those radicals from taking over the good thinking and the good hearts of everyone in this world.
Yes, sir.
A former professor, presently a professor in India and the former ambassador, the first ambassador of Iceland to India.
Thank you. I'm good, Mr. Erickson. Yes, I was one of these arcane people that you referred to just a minute ago. Well, just this weekend, the Honorable Foreign Minister of Iran was here, and I actually asked him a question because he was speaking very eloquently about zero-sum games and so forth. And so I asked him, in the light of the rapprochement which at least existed until recently between Iran and the United States, whether he could, in the same type of rapprochement with other types of shall we say, foes in the area. I didn't mention any names. Now, you were very specific in referring to the relationship that you have with Iran. And can I ask you whether you see any hope for some kind of a change in that relationship? The foreign minister referred to the OPEC meeting, recent OPEC meeting, as some kind of a sign that even that is possible between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Thank you.
Very interesting question, and we have tried very hard in the past. We've extended our hands of friendship and cooperation to Iran on many different levels, many different times. But I think with the current regime and the way they think, and from their previous behavior, the export of revolution, wilayat al-faqih, the base of their sector, the Shiite sector thinking. The United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia or the Muslim world has nothing to do with the Shiites sectors. We have UAE nationals living in the UAE, and they are Shiites from different sectors. But they made it and they created it to look political, with that cover of religion. I'll share with you a small information. One of the leaders of the African countries, Iranian president, Rouhani, asking him for the release of XYZ person from jail because, he's a good man and all that. Now, that African president thought that it's an Iranian individual who was there, and for some reason he was arrested and put in jail. To find out that no, it was not an Iranian person. It was the national of that specific country. But because he was one of those people who was sort of put in the categories of those mullahs, and there was a relationship and so on and so on. So the African president, said to Rouhani, well, this guy is my national, and you are, coming in the middle to ask for his release. I want to know why. Now the African leader went back and looked around, found out that a couple of years back, 4 years back, there was only one Husseiniya, we call it. Husseiniya is a place where the Iranians or the Shiites perform some of their religious habits. Four years back. And then since then, although that country is not a Shiite country, it's a Muslim African country, and the majorities are Sunnis, to find out that in 2 years' time, the Iranians had built more than 280 Husseinias in that specific country. Now, having said that, we don't have a problem with the Iranians as individuals, and when we talk even about religion. But there are only certain people whom mixed politics, religion, politics, and covered politics with religion and religion with politics. And they refuse even to hear to voice of wisdom and to any sort of reason, unfortunately. We have always called in the international arena that we want a peaceful settlement. We have a dispute with Iran regarding the three islands. And we've always said we will not go into a conflict with Iran. International court, United Nations, and so on and so on. We hope that the Iranians will come into their correct mind and right whatever thinking, and to be able to sort out their differences with the rest of the Muslim world, not only the UAE or Saudi Arabia or whatever.
Thank you, Excellency. You have been very generous with your very valuable time. We greatly appreciate your.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will now break for a brief interval, not for maybe 5 minutes or so, 2 minutes while we reorganize the chairs.